for making it this long in the conference. I appreciate that. So they gave my background a little bit. I'm going to go over it again because I think it's important here. So currently I work at Facebook as a product manager on the local team. So we're connecting local businesses with Facebook users, right? Pretty simple. Previously I worked at Rent the Runway, and that's for those of you guys who don't know, mostly guys probably, it's a fashion company in New York, and we rent dresses to women. It can be not women, I suppose, and that's awesome. But it's a mid-sized startup, around 200, maybe 50 people in the engineering department, and about 200 people in the other kind of HQ roles. Previously, I was at Amazon, and I worked in the audiobooks division, otherwise known as Audible, and that was also in New York. And I've also worked at a very, very small startup, like 2 people at one point, working out of an apartment that smelled like hockey gear. It was like the class, it's the garage version in New York, And so I have a lot of experience at different kinds of companies, different sizes, different personality, different culture. And one of the most common things you see in all these different companies is every single one of them has office politics. So this is the kind of key question here, is like, why am I even talking about this when there's so many interesting topics about data, about minimum viable products, product market fit, jobs to be done. Those are all like incredibly important. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to answer this question with another question. Are you annoyed with someone at work right now? Like, can't really see you guys, but like everyone can raise their hands, and the people who like don't is like, no, like tell us where you work and I'll apply for a job there. I think this is pretty universal, right? People are annoying sometimes. Sometimes you're annoying. So back to this question. The reason we talk about office politics at a product management conference is because as a product manager, you talk with people. You work with people. Your job is actually a lot about people, right? Not emojis, people, but there will be a lot of emojis in this talk because it's after lunch and you gotta keep the energy up. So the other reason why this talk is in the growth pillar of this conference, right, is that the more your product grows, the more your company grows, the bigger of a company you are, the more people you end up working with. And not twins, apparently, the way I copy-pasted this. But you work with more and more people, and as your responsibility as a product manager grows, so will the number of people you work with. So I get a question sometimes from junior PMs or people who want to become PMs, which is, what's the difference between a junior PM and a senior PM, right? And I was like, actually, it's all very similar. You're solving a problem, you're identifying what that is, and then creating solutions to that problem. But the size and scope and scale of the problems are different. Senior people are going to be trusted with higher risk things that the press is going to care about, whereas you might give a junior PM something like an internal tool or something like that, right? But what happens when your visibility increases is the volume of people that care about your product also increases, and so you need to know how to handle all these situations, which is what leads to office politics broadly, or drama is another way to put it. All right, so this is just like a quick summary of why I think this kind of thing is very important. So the more you can build trust with all these different types of people, the better your strategy and the better your decisions, right? So we talked about jobs to be done. So many of these like great concepts that you're learning about at this conference, they all make sense in a room full of product people, right? We're all like, yeah, that makes them like love that. And then you go back to your company, wherever it is, and maybe it's somewhere like Facebook where everyone gets it. Like, we all use jobs to be done at Facebook. It's like written on every whiteboard. But I've worked at companies where like people don't know what you're talking about, right? And so you need those relationships and you need that trust to be able to evangelize and storytell all these concepts to people around you. And you can have a great story and you can be super logical, but if people don't trust you, it kind of doesn't matter. So the more you can build those bridges, the better. So better strategy, better decision making, because people will now come to you with information. And at the end of the day, most importantly, less stress, right? You won't have, if you can depersonalize a lot of these conflicts and a lot of the places where these misalignments occur, then your job will be easier and you can go home and like the hives on your neck and the acne that you get from all that stress, like those will all go away, I promise. So yeah, you don't have to go to your dermatologist anymore, apparently, if you follow these slides. All right, so the way I've seen it work out in multiple companies, so Rent the Runway, Amazon, Facebook, is that I kind of think there are 2 root causes for all office politics and all office drama. So the first one here is just a misunderstanding of what everyone else is doing at a company. So when I think about where you work, you're probably trying to all make money, right? That's why you probably exist. Maybe if you're a nonprofit, you're not trying to make money, but for the most part, you're all like focused on revenue, at least indirectly. However, and as a product manager, you're probably closer to that than most people. The problem is not everyone in the micro sense is going to be focused on those numbers. You think they are, but they probably aren't. So understand their goal. So let's start with kind of an anecdote from my background, right? So I mentioned I worked at Audible, and it's product manager, it's me. There's no product manager emoji, fact, but this is close enough, right? So what was I in charge of at Audible? So one of the projects was a content promotion, essentially, right? So get a big bunch of audiobooks and then kind of like sell it in a specific way, and we're going to get people to listen to more and more of these audiobooks. So it's a pretty big project, not your average content promotion. And it involved, gathering marketing, technology, branding, everyone. But it also, not shockingly, involved getting books, the content. So I went and I was like, okay, I think we need about 10,000 books for this promotion, give or take. And like Audible has like millions and millions of books, so I just wanted a small portion so we could really make this great. Like the success of a content promotion really lies in the content. I mean, that should not be surprising. So I go to the head of content and I said, okay, what 10,000 books am I gonna get? He's like, you're gonna get 150 books. I'm like, what? I was so mad. I was like really mad. Like this is like an accurate depiction of what I looked like at the time. I was like, you are an idiot. I don't think I said this. I hope I didn't say this, but I thought this. You're an idiot. You're trying to sabotage me. You don't know anything about audiobooks. This guy's been there for like 10 years. Like, you don't know anything about audiobooks. And I was like just super mad about it. And it was because like, honestly, at the end of the day, I didn't know what I was talking about, okay? I was the idiot, right? This is me after I realized what was going on. So without getting into the deep, dirty details of publishing, turns out him giving me all the books that I wanted made his job harder. Not just like, oh, my job is hard, I want it to be hard, but like his job was to ultimately have relationships with publishers, maintain them over time, and then be able to acquire books later down the road. Turns out my content promotion, if he gave me everything I wanted, made those conversations harder over time. And so he was very reluctant to give me a lot of books because in his eyes, it put at risk the rest of the business, which is like a thing that makes sense when you actually understand it. However, in my not very wise days, I was like, he's an idiot, right? Like, I can't believe he would do this to me. So my point here is there's this tension in the business that I did not see and I did not realize, and I absorbed the differences there as something like he was an idiot and he's trying to sabotage me, which is very, very immature, and I highly recommend not doing that. And so the thing that is super interesting, and the thing that I've observed over time as I've kind of gone from another business to another business, and also just talking with other people and how they deal with the politics within their company, is that much of what you see here is super, super predictable. Like, everyone kind of thinks their company is a special snowflake of like, oh, this person is the worst, and he's like a special type of terrible, and like my life is really hard. But what's actually happening is much of it is not that surprising. So this is like a table. I'm like, if I can put concepts into a spreadsheet, I'm always gonna do that. But what I'm trying to show here is that I've kind of roughly broken down every kind of company into 5 like kind of business types or business models. And what I'm saying here is that depending on your business model, my hypothesis, my prediction is that I can kind of tell you where your conflict is gonna be as a product manager. So I'm kind of assuming everyone here is a product manager. So for instance, I think the very common ones we recognize as PMs or people in the product org is like product and design often are in conflict because the designer wants to do something, some designers, some don't. Some designers want to do something that's aesthetically pleasing, however not that usable. An example would be, we had a designer that really liked thin lines at Audible, but one of Audible's core customers are like people who are visually impaired, which makes sense. They couldn't read the words because it was beautiful, but it's like blurs, just like blurs of nonsense to people who can't see. And that was a problem, but that was a conflict there, and it's sort of predictable. Same with engineering. Engineers tend to love to build systems that are like grand and make sense, and sometimes you just need a hack to see if it's gonna work. Those are conflicts that are common and you can predict. However, I think there are conflicts that are much tougher to see if you are deep in the weeds, and that are actually still predictable if you kind of step back and think about it. So some examples here. And I have not worked at all these companies. I actually don't know if these are the conflicts at these companies, but I'm just giving some examples. So I think one that's great is enterprise. So I'm sure a bunch of people here work at like kind of B2B enterprise type companies. So the way I define that is basically any company with a sales team. And I'm betting you that you guys really don't like each other, right? Because the sales team is selling rocket ships, and you are like cobbling together a rickshaw on the other side of the office, right? And you're like, stop telling people that we can build this. We can't build this stuff. And you just like are like, these people don't listen, right? But at the end of the day, the salespeople have different goals. They have different customers, and that tension is natural. And it's not worth getting mad over the person, and it's just figuring out how you can work through that kind of structure that's there. I think another version of this is platform B2C. I just like kind of made these like phrases up. I don't know if they're like real categories of things, but like an Uber or an Airbnb where you have general managers, right? So Uber kind of, like my guess is they treat every city slightly differently. A lot of times when you do internationalizations, you want different features for different countries, right? Often the general managers are asking for things that are, once again, customizations, things for specific markets. And you're trying to build something scalable, something that works for as many people as possible. And those things are inherently in conflict. And so you will find in companies like this that PMs and GMs are like constantly at each other's throat. And so what I'm saying here is that if you understand how the business works, you can understand the people and like why your relationships look like they do. And this is not totally universal. There's personalities at play. Sometimes someone in your role is actually the person that you have the most conflict with. But like, this explains a lot, right? A lot of you are probably nodding your heads like, oh, yeah, totally. And she nailed it. I don't even know anything about your business, and I probably like nailed it half the time on that slide. So what is it? What are you supposed to do about this, right? So if you think back to the name of this talk, the one sentence that will help you conquer office politics. So first of all, that was like a total BuzzFeed move. It's late in the day. I needed a reason for you guys to come. But the sentence is this, right? It's kind of a goofy sentence. What are you optimizing for? But it's like super, super useful. I use it all the time in my personal life, with my boyfriend and my family, but also at work. And the question is just trying to get at like, really, really understanding, not making the assumption that we're all here to make money for this company, and hence that's all the same set of tools, right? At the end of the day, they help the company make money in some other way, and you need to understand that. So these are some example questions that I find useful. There's probably more that you can add to this set, but what is this other person hired to do? Is his customer different from mine? And what are his goals? So using this framework, roughly this framework, let's use the example I had before from the content acquisition guy, right? So what was this person hired to do? He's here to acquire content. Makes sense. Is his customer different from mine? The answer is definitely yes, right? He is trying to manage his long-term relationship with publishers in a way that I don't really know about or like at the time cared about. I care about it now, right? And what are his goals? So to maintain these relationships so he can have these long-term ability to acquire content. So 10 years from now, when they need to renegotiate a deal, he can do it in good faith, as opposed to, oh, remember that time where you did that thing that was super annoying? I don't want to give you good terms anymore for your negotiation. So you can see why, if someone has these goals, and as a product manager, I'm trying to sell more books or get people to listen to more books, they wouldn't necessarily be aligned, and we wouldn't come to the same conclusion for what we should do, right? So I think that's a good example. I think it's a good way to think about some of the people that you're butting heads with as you go along and kind of go along in your career, or right now with whoever is annoying you, from that second slide. Okay, so you're like, oh my God, everything is solved. All the problems can be like kind of put into a spreadsheet, and then like I'm done, right? It's awesome. That's of course not. That's not true. So the second reason office drama exists is here. Okay, so you have inherent tension in a business, and even if you understand the tensions and everyone gets it, people are bad at communicating. Sometimes the person you're working with is bad at communicating, sometimes you're bad, and in the best scenarios ever, it's both of you who are bad and you're just like screaming at each other, which it happens, right? It even happens with people who are super self-aware and have been trained on how to communicate. It's crazy. So I'm going to give you another example from my Rent the Runway days. Super interesting. So I was on the side of the business where we just strictly trying to rent more dresses. So I have a revenue goal, right? So how many more people can we convert off the site than before? And what we wanted to do was do a very simple cross out. So the way Rent the Runway works is we take these super expensive dresses, it can be originally like $500, and then we rent them for like $30 or $50 or something like that. So a very traditional e-commerce tactic here would be show the retail price and cross it out with a nice, fun red thing in the middle, and then be like, oh, but look how cheap this thing is. And this works, right? Amazon does it, and if Amazon does it, it must be the correct thing to do. And so we launched this thing, and then we sent out the company email that was like, okay, we launched this thing, we're really excited to see how it goes, like maybe a 2 to 5% bump in conversion, we're gonna make so much money. So almost immediately, someone from the fashion side of the business ran over and said to us, hey guys, like this thing you just launched is horrible, it's so ugly, it's so tacky, like you need to get rid of it, I don't know what you were thinking, like why are you doing this to us, right? She was like mad. Like, this is like upset, but I think like it was more like the red emoji, right? So she was not happy with us. So like what was happening? Like why was she so mad? Like we're trying to make money, right? We're all trying to like fund our paychecks here. What was she optimizing for? So let's do this exercise again. What is this person hired to do? So this person was a creative designer. We have designers, UX designers, but we also had creative and branding designers. So 2 sets of designers. But she was really focused not on helping us make more money directly, but really keeping the site looking luxury. So anyone who works in luxury retail or luxury anything in this room will understand where I'm coming from here. It's a very interesting industry, but basically, you need to keep your site looking beautiful so that people like, I'm just gonna throw out some names here, like Diane von Furstenberg, Oscar de la Renta, all these like very high-end luxury companies want to be on your site. And actually, the minute they don't really like what you look like, they'll just be like, I don't want to be on your site anymore, you can't buy our inventory anymore. And that like has a really, really strong effect on your bottom line, right? If you don't have any dresses to sell or rent, you have no business. So they're there to keep those brands happy. And the buyers within Rent the Runway, they also need to be happy. So that once again, it's actually oddly similar to the audiobook example where you have people in the business who are trying to maintain external relationships, and what we do on the site with end users really affects those relationships. So here, the buyers are also gonna be pretty mad about this change because they'll have some brand being like, this is so tacky. I mentioned Amazon as an example of an e-commerce player that uses crossouts. Like, no luxury brands are on Amazon, right? Because they're like, they don't want to be associated with it. It's too ugly or like lowbrow. I don't work in luxury anymore. I buy all my clothes on Amazon, actually. So what's interesting is, what are her goals? So her goals are to keep these people happy, the other side of the business happy. Her goals, once again, are not to help me rent dresses. And so, actually, Rent the Runway was the job after Audible. And so I was like, okay, I know what's going on here. I have my framework already that I started already, cooking up in my head. And I was like, we all like are friends, and I understand your side of the business, you understand ours, let's work this all out. But honestly, by that point, like after she came like rushing over, bum rushed our team, everyone was so mad at each other at that point. And so I imagine this world where everyone starts every conversation was like, hey guys, like, I know what you're trying to do here. You're trying to make more money. I know you're gold against that. But we need to maintain our relationships with the brands. And can we work something out? Like, wouldn't it be nice if everyone started every conversation like that? But in reality, as you all know, instead you get passive-aggressive emails. You get like condescending, like, what are you doing? Or like, we're going to put more management on this. And it's like everything that happens feels very insulting. And it really comes down to communication, because even if you understand where they're coming from, if they don't communicate it well, you're just going to get emotional about it, and that's actually very normal, right? So what are we supposed to do with this? So as product managers, this is your job. This is what it all kind of comes down to. And as product managers, you look at job descriptions out there in the world, right? And the top bullet is almost always need to be great at communicating. And what's interesting is that I think a lot of people interpret that line item as being, oh, like needs to write good one-pagers, or like needs to be able to explain a feature clearly. And all those things are actually really true, right? But what's not, it's kind of hidden in there, and what becomes even more important as you grow in your role is you need to be able to communicate with all types of people within your company to be able to understand these things. And the other thing that's important here is that you, as a product manager, are the one responsible for this relationship. I think, what's really funny, so Nancy earlier this morning in her talk said that she'd be the only person talking about tampons at this conference. That is false. I'm going to talk about tampons right now. So I am a tech advisor. I'm a tech advisor at a tampon subscription company, MyLola. And they have a very small product team, and I'm working with their product org. And they're very frustrated, right? And what's happening is that they're like, we're trying to use all these like agile and lean methodologies and like, turning to a lot of the things that you read online in these workshops. But no one listens to us. Like, no one cares. They just ignore all the process that we set up. And I kind of was like, you know what? At the end of the day, this is a consumer packaged good company. It's a tampon company. And the most important thing at this company are the tampons. They're not the buttons on the website, right? It's the tampons and getting the tampons to people on time in a way they expected. So they have a different schedule, the physical goods, right? And this is coming back to that retail example, or like that chart where retail is a little different, because their timelines are not 2-week sprints. Their timelines are like 4-week development processes. And in some ways, the technology needs to adapt to the physical product, the core product. And so what I told the product team is like, it is your job to reach out to them and adapt to them, because they don't care about what you're doing. It's your job to care. And so in a normal world that's fair, you would come 50-50, and you as a young product manager, be like, I made this effort, good faith effort, to reach out to this team, and they didn't come halfway, and they suck. I hate them, and I don't want to work with them anymore. I'm over it. Like, you can't do that. And what really happens is a product team, a product manager, you have to make a 99% effort, and they only have to make the 1% effort. And this is a way to reframe how you work with other teams, right? So one is know there's conflict, and two, be the master communicator and reach out to them. And it is on you to understand what they're optimizing for, and on you to explain what you're optimizing for, and create that shared understanding. And try not to be so mad when it comes out the wrong way, because that's just going to happen. And if you ask for that to not happen anymore, you can't really do anything about it. What you can do is how you react, and also how you react to them, like what you do to them, right? So this is the bad news, I guess. So a lot of this is about how to manage these relationships. What this isn't, it's not a persuasion tool, right? I'm not teaching you how to get what you want here. If you want that, that's a different class. I don't know. It's like, I don't know what that is, what talk that is. But what this is about is understanding the kind of environment you live in, that you work in, and being able to navigate that with the most amount of efficiency and the least amount of stress. It's all I'm about, stress reduction right now. And so I think that this is like a very important point, that it's not about getting what you want, because actually when you dig into it, you might realize that what you want isn't the right thing to do. A great example back to the Rent the Runway example, we want to do a big cross-off and get slightly more revenue, right? But if we do that, maybe we lose a key brand. And the way that the fashion industry works is like you lose one brand, you can lose like 10 others because they all follow along. And at an early stage of a business, it might be worth it to lose the revenue in the short term to gain those relationships on the fashion side. So the CEO, you do what I call a clean escalation, and you talk to the person who kind of has power over both goals, and she says, you know what? The more important goal right now is to have these 10 designers, and it's not as important as the 2% increase in conversion. And you know what? That's okay. That's actually a rational decision to make. What's interesting is 5 years later, you can have 100 more brands, and then those 10 brands are no longer important, and that 2% increase in revenue is actually more important. So different decision can be rational at different times of a company. And it's okay if what you originally wanted is not what actually makes sense when you gather all the information. So hopefully it is what you want, because now you have more info. But I'm not here saying that this is how you convince people to do things, right? This is how you build trust over time, so that in the aggregate, all the right decisions are made. All right, so back to this slide in summary, right? I think, has anyone here heard the phrase like, assume the best intentions? Actually, at Rent the Runway, it was like one of our core values, which I thought was really cool. Actually, I didn't think it was that cool at first. I kind of rolled my eyes at it. I was like, that's some kumbaya, like weirdo stuff, right? Like it's all hugging each other or whatever. That's what I kind of thought at first. But assume the best intentions is not a kumbaya concept, actually. It's incredibly practical. And what it means is that people are making a decision for a reason, and what you should assume is that you don't know what that reason is yet until you ask. And you now have, hopefully, the things that can help you ask, right? The strategies, the questions. And once you have those relationships and you have that trust, you you will hopefully be able to do a better job with your strategy, your decision making, all those jobs to be done, all those MVP, everything you wanted to do. You now have the tools to actually push them through and get that buy-in. And hopefully, I'm hoping, you also have the less stress. You can kind of look like this lady here. I have never looked like that in my life. I'm not that zen. But by being this person, I'm truly hoping that you can be a better product manager also. Thanks, guys.